Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. Today I'm joined by the Chief Agricultural Editor of SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, as well as the 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director, Ryan Young. I'm Doug Falconer, Agriculture Director at GX94 in Yorkton. And the big thing that happened this week, gentlemen, was the announcement that happened on Friday afternoon regarding the Saskatchewan Crop Insurance Corporation. And Kevin and Ryan, you both had a chance to listen in on that.
Yeah, Ryan, you go ahead with the overview. I'll talk about the prices.
For sure. Yeah, so overall, David Merritt, as custom to any provincial agriculture minister, they made the announcement at the head office in Melville just to kind of go over, notable things such as insured prices and some enhancements made to the program. Really, overall, I kind of felt it was an underwhelming announcement and news conference. There wasn't anything brand new other than the satellite forage insurance program that was a pilot project last year. It's being fully introduced for this year. Other than that, that's only kind of the new-ish thing. And yeah, that was pretty much it in terms of an overview, kind of quick and simple.
Yeah, I would agree. There's, not really much there for a news conference because the satellite livestock insurance program for forages had already been announced and people knew it was coming. And they really didn't spend a lot of time talking about price levels for the various crops under insurance for 2026. But that's really what producers will look at coming out of this announcement. And they're now posted on the saskcropinsurance.com website. And I would venture to say that, the crop insurance prices will, if they don't change seeding intentions, they will certainly reinforce seeding intentions. And one of the few crops to actually increase in price insurance is canola. It's up to 14.06 a bushel, and that's higher than last year at 13.50. So especially if you're in areas where crop insurance is very important, because we've seen a number of droughts, specifically in that southwest region. Canola is not a big crop normally down there, but I would venture to say that at 14.06 a bushel, it's going to gain acres because producers are going to look at it, and the insurance level and the profitability make it look appealing compared to many other cropping options. Because as far as spring wheat and durum insurance levels, they declined a little bit. Peas and lentils and chickpeas declined dramatically in their insurance coverage. So I think that's the big deal that comes out of the crop insurance announcement. As producers get their individual information on their premiums and their yield coverage, and then plug in these price levels, that I think is going to reinforce decisions. There's going to be more canola acres, particularly in non-traditional areas, and I think lentils, peas, and chickpea acres are all going to be down. The crop insurance price levels mirroring what is happening in the market generally.
Another big event came out Friday morning in Washington, where the United States Supreme Court struck down U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. Does that sound like it's a big deal then, Kevin?
Well, it's a big deal that it was challenged, and the court made a decision against what the Trump administration had done. Unfortunately, I believe that listening to the analysts, that there's many other ways that President Trump can go about implementing tariffs. And actually, the ones struck down were the very early ones that were the excuse was things like fentanyl coming into the U.S. I think he has a number of other options as a way that he can unilaterally impose tariffs. So I don't really think the decision changes the overall picture very much.
All right. And Ryan, you wrote a story this week about, actually quite a few stories this week about the snowstorm that went through southern and central Saskatchewan. And it sounds like a good part of the province got hit by this big snowstorm, but the Southwest once again missed it.
Yeah, I remember distinctly just scrolling through Facebook one day, one of the weather pages that came up in my feed, they had a satellite image of southwest Saskatchewan and eastern Alberta, where you could see around those regions where the snow is, and how thick the snow is or how much snow there was. except for those two regions where it was just absolutely bare and brown, which is unfortunate because this snowstorm brought quite a bit of snow to the areas that it did traverse through, west central, central parts of the province, even in the Regina area and southern parts of Saskatchewan, going into Manitoba. Depending on where you are, the totals may be different, but from what I heard, generally speaking, it was going to be in the neighborhood of 15 to 30 centimeters, maybe even more. Around here in Regina, I would say we probably got close to a foot of snow, and it was so much snow, in fact, that I did try to come into work one day, but I only got to the edge of Grand Coulee where I live and decided that it wasn't worthwhile going into the radio station because, for one, you can only see one lane of the road that was kind of free, but not really. And then you had the gusty winds and blowing snow that just created zero visibility. So for those reasons, I worked from home the one day. So that was quite an experience. So thankfully it's over. It only lasted a couple days. It was kind of overdue considering the warm weather that we had for the week and a half prior. Doug, I could imagine you guys got quite a bit of snow in Yorkton as well.
Yeah, I would say we got at least a foot of snow as well. Really paralyzed the city for a few hours anyway until the snow stopped and the crews could finally get out and start moving some snow. I haven't had to leave city limits, so I guess been lucky that way. But I know it was difficult for a lot of people to get into work. And Kevin, I understand Saskatoon had a lot too, but you're not there right now. Have you heard any reports on Saskatoon and, of course, your farm in the Cabri area?
Yeah, I'm out of the country right now, but Saskatoon also lots of snow and lots of snow to move. And as Ryan indicated, all the indications are from southwest Saskatchewan that very light snowfall. As you move eastward towards Moose Jaw, yes, you start to see more snow, I'm told, but much of southwest Saskatchewan, very limited snow. I guess the only saving grace is this is only February. Some of the heaviest snows and some of the wet snows can happen in late February, March, even April, sometimes even May. So there's still time, but it is worrisome in southwest Saskatchewan, just given the history of dry conditions there over much of that region for over too many years now.
Also, this week, Ryan, you had a chance to listen to an interview with Chad Ross, the president of the Saskatchewan Cattle Association, and he was talking about the traceability regulations that the CFIA is proposing. And of course, they've been getting feedback from producers. What did you get to hear from those comments?
One of the things that kind of stood out was just his explanation of what traceability is, and just kind of thinking about all the reaction about the proposed traceability regulations. What can get lost is what is traceability anyway, and I thought he had a really good explanation on what traceability is, how it works, and there is some good that comes with it, especially when it comes to disease outbreaks. That's where it comes in handy. He kind of used this analogy too about these proposed regulations and what the CFIA is kind of looking to do, even though it did garner the backlash, was they get the beginning and the end of the book. What the CFIA is trying to do, they're just trying to get the middle of the book. What happens with the movement in between, the time of the branding all the way to going to an abattoir or slaughterhouse. So I thought that was kind of a standout thing for me, and he just also kind of reiterated, some of the producer concerns that they've heard so far, whether that's just in general or through the recent open forum meetings that they've been hosting around the province, such as PA, Rosetown, another community that's not coming to mind right now, but they have been holding those meetings just with regards to the additional paperwork that might be required with reporting the movement of cattle, going to farm shows or going to the vet clinic, stuff like that. So overall, I thought it was an interesting explanation, and yeah, we'll see where this goes moving forward. We're definitely not done with this issue.
What did you think about that, Kevin?
I think perhaps everything got ahead of itself, and producers were reacting to stories and rumors and no clear, firm understanding of what CFIA really was proposing. I think it's a real positive sign that producers are now hearing what is being proposed, being able to give their feedback. And yeah, there's going to be a bit more work there, but with producer input, perhaps the real troublesome parts of putting cattle under unnecessary stress at various times can be eliminated. Yes, there are going to be some extra requirements proposed, but at least if the industry and the regulators are talking, perhaps it can all be worked out to make better sense for everybody.
Also, this week we heard that the federal government is, I guess, putting in another study or about to undertake another study regarding the possible expansion of the port of Churchill in northern Manitoba due to its proximity to the Arctic gateway there. Kevin, I know in the past you've always been a little skeptical of the port of Churchill as a future, I guess, hub.
And then maybe it makes sense for a lot of commodities. I think it's going to require a fair bit of work to make agricultural commodities, grain exports really viable out of there. You know, the rail line and the port at Churchill were privately owned for many years by Omnitrax. They could never make a go of it. AGT Foods and I think it was Fairfax International and some First Nations bands took over and tried to make a go of it. There's been no real grain exported out of Churchill for years and years. Even when it did, it was pretty low volumes. 500,000 tons a year was a big year for Churchill. So I think it's a little bit of a stretch to think that that's going to change dramatically. But with other reasons for wanting other commodities in and out of Churchill and Arctic sovereignty and a bunch of other considerations, if there's significant investment in the rail line and significant investment in facilities and icebreakers and continued warming of the climate to some degree, although I'm a little skeptical that some people think that we're going to be ice-free in the Arctic anytime soon, perhaps it's got a place. I just don't think it's going to be something that we see very quickly in any sizable quantities. And it's really not on the big list of government priorities yet. It's sort of on a subsidiary list, but certainly it's a priority of the Manitoba government. So it is going to be something to watch, and there are people that are far more optimistic about the port's potential than I am.
All right, and finally, we heard this week that Bayer Crop Science wants to put up $7.25 billion US to try to help and settle all the litigation against it regarding its Roundup glyphosate product that many people claim has caused cancer in them, and they're trying to resolve all of that sort of thing. Is this a good move? Does this finally need to be put behind everyone, considering they claim that it's safe?
Yeah, it's an amazing situation where the courts have given massive payouts to people claiming they got cancer from glyphosate. And all of the scientific evidence say that is not the case, but courts have made decision after decision. I think that any logical person looking at it at the beginning of this would have thought that none of those lawsuits would have been successful. Bayer Crop Science had bought out Monsanto and gained the rights to glyphosate must be scratching their heads wondering how'd they ever get themselves into this hornet's nest. So it'll be interesting to see if these new billions of dollars can finally put this to rest, or whether Bayer's going to say to heck with it all. We just won't provide Roundup anymore. We're gonna quit doing that. Well, then that's the question is what happens then to the glyphosate supply? Can you still get it from generic manufacturers? What happens in the Canadian situation? But it's absolute nonsense what the courts have done in the U.S. regarding glyphosate, and judges making decisions on anecdotal evidence that somebody had glyphosate applied to their lawn once and now has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's absolute nonsense. But again, there's many people that disagree with my view on that.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young and the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer, saying so long until next time.